Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
I haven't talked to Melissa Rivers, Joan's daughter, in a long time. And then, of course, her new book came out, Lies My Mother Told Me, Tall Tales from a Short Woman. And I got the biggest kick out of it. I heard Joan in her daughter's voice. Melissa, your mom would have loved this book and been so proud of you. Enjoyed every minute of it. And what a perfect time, because we all thought Joan Rivers right at the Oscars when that little incident happened with the slap that people are still talking about.
Absolutely. You know, my running joke has been she would have said thank you for the new house, because there's so much material.
No, absolutely. And I'm sure that when that happened, your phone started ringing like crazy. What would Joan Rivers have done?
Oh, it's been nonstop. She would have been horrified. I mean, you knew her well enough to know that would have absolutely just she would have been so upset.
Well, you know, as much as your mother was in someone's face, if she had to be, she never really, as far as I knew, ever exhibited any kind of really bad behavior. I can't imagine her ever even thinking of anything like that.
Oh, no, never. But I do think it would be frightening to her, as it is, I think, to a lot of comedians, that it's now almost open season. Dangerous,
right. Right.
Very.
It's dangerous. By the way, if you've just joined me, I'm talking to Melissa Rivers, and Melissa is herself an award-winning personality on TV. She's a producer. She's written best-selling books. And the newest, Lies My Mother Told Me, Tall Tales from a Short Woman, is really funny. And it's Joan, and it's this mother-daughter joined at the hip. And it's funny because even growing up, the three of you, your dad, your mom, and you were a really tight unit. And whatever your mother did, traveling all the time on the road, I always got the feeling, did you ever feel like you were the deserted kid or no?
Oh, God, no. You know, there were points, where my parents were the parents that made it to every game. And when you're a teenager, you're like, oh, please stop already.
Right. Give me a break.
I never felt that way at all. Even as an adult, I was like, God, too much. Like, leave me alone.
Well, she actually moved in with you at a time, I remember.
Yeah, she was living with Cooper and me probably 3 days a week, sometimes 4, when we were doing Fashion Police and the reality show and all that all at once. So she was very much in the house.
Well, and your mom, and it's actually in the book, but she had this tradition that you included called Grandma Week. She was obsessed with your child. And that was everyone who knew her was like, we can't believe that's Joan Rivers. She worshiped that little boy, now a big boy.
Yeah, he's 21.
I know, hard to believe.
Cooper is 21 and a junior at Berkeley.
And does he want to go into the family entertainment world?
No, he's much more interested in new media and is a media studies major. So he's really into sort of the next wave of all of that. He has no desire to be in front of the camera, and he's much more interested in this whole sort of wild west of the new world of entertainment.
Right, and it's a new language all over again.
Yes, so that's where his head is at.
Yeah, but it's okay. And he and your mom had this incredible relationship. I loved Melissa. It was a Rivers Melissa line when your mom took Cooper on these trips. And when she told him on one of their adventures that they had to leave the Vatican and instead now go to the seat of Judaism. And when the kid looked at her and said, Jerusalem, Grandma, and your mother said, no, sweetheart, Bloomingdale's. It was just so perfect, right? That was a perfect Joan Rivers line.
Yeah, I had so much fun writing the book, and people keep, and you knew my mom, so you understood the humor in it. People keep saying, did she really say and do these things? And I'm like, no, this is a very hyper realistic. No, she never told me I had a secret brother who was perfect named Melvin. You know, she really did know the story of the real Thanksgiving. She didn't tell me that the Pilgrims were bad guests because they moved the place cards. You know, so, you know, people keep saying, well, what's true in it? I'm like, well, we had Thanksgiving. There was Grandma Week. She did like going to theater, but no, she did not meet the Pope on Broadway.
She would have in her head because she had a lot 100%, to say.
100%. This in her head, all of this could have happened.
No, which is funny. But I get the feeling she didn't really push you, right? I mean, you made a lot of choices that were your choices. It wasn't like her sort of saying, you got to do this, you got to do that.
You know, I think every parent in their own way pushes their child, and you just have to sort of know your audience. And her whole thing was I would eventually come around to what she wanted me to do. And believe me, when I didn't, I would hear about it. But she, you know, just like I know how to handle my son, she knew how to handle me and push me in the direction she thought was best. But every parent knows how to you know, how to manipulate their child.
No,
you know, I know with Cooper I know with Cooper what I need to
how
say.
To deal. I know.
Yeah, you know, we just had a conversation the other day where he was making sort of this very declarative statement about something about his future, and I'm like, okay, I mean, all I can tell you is from my experience, this is what I did, and this is how it worked out for me, and you can make your own decisions, and I can only tell you what I went through and from my point of view, how I got there. And, you know, 2 days later, he's like, you know, I think you're right. I'm like, yeah. So with him, I know I always have to be like, look, this was my experience.
Right. And your mom taught you no matter what, that funny is funny and you have to laugh, even during tragic moments, to get through. And you do that too with your own. I mean, the loss of your mom was not only devastating to you, but to your son. He had this incredible relationship with his grandmother.
100%. And I had to, you know, get him through it, which I think in hindsight helped me get through it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I couldn't fall apart. I had this little person to take care of. So, you know, it you know, my parents always taught me really about focus on the important part of it and you'll get through it. You don't know it, you know, in our family, we were like, okay, you're allowed your moment. Now get up and put one foot in front of the other. And what I found so interesting is, you know, I've always been very, very strong. And so many of my mom's friends would say, like, we're shocked. And I wanted to be like, why? Why are you shocked that I'm coping?
Right, that you're strong and you're like living your life.
And I found that fascinating.
Well, why do you think that was?
For the life of me, I don't know. Because those, and these were some of the people who were very close to our family. And I think, I don't know, maybe they were channeling or projecting their own emotions. But I remember sitting, believe it or not, at the first Thanksgiving after my mother passed, and them saying, well, we're so impressed that you didn't fall apart. And we all assumed we were going to be picking you up off the floor. And I literally was like, do you know where I come from?
Right.
You know, you've known me almost my whole life. I'm shocked that you would think that. And to this day, I can't get my head around that. But you also say, okay, you know, maybe they're projecting, you know, and take it as they're proud of how I'm handling it.
You know, sometimes when there's an only child, you know, people who are looking in can't quite accept the fact that, yeah, that child is independent. That child has a life, despite her closeness to her family, her mother and her father. And you've always been your own person and done what you wanted. But a lot of people just don't get that. Just like, you know, I remember, Melissa, the first time I went to your mother's house, I still remember feeling shocked because, you know, the Joan Rivers that you see on the stage or at a club or stand up and always funny and right there and cutting, this house was this gracious, gorgeous, genteel, you know, beautiful china and everything. You didn't realize Joan Rivers had a lot of faces, and one of them was right.
100%. 100%. And just to go back for a sec, and because it just kind of dawned on me in a sort of strange way, I think one of the reasons people, that was so shocking to me that people really thought that, I wanted to turn around and say, do you know my family? Do you think, you know, the worst thing I could do in my mother's memory was not cope and fall apart. That would be so disrespectful of how
that's
I was
perfect
raised.
Way. Mm-hmm. No, you are your mother's daughter, and she would expect nothing less than picking up those reins and being strong and giving that gift to your own child.
Exactly.
No, because both of you went through a lot. And also, I mean, you know, your mom hung out with the royals too. A lot of people forget that, right?
Someone just asked me my opinion on all that, and I'm like, everyone forgets that families have fights. Theirs is just being, you know, yes, they're held to a different, you know, expectation in decorum, but everyone forgets families have fights. And they're a family.
No, they are a family that's gone way back, and they understand how important it is to hold itself together. And I'm sure that when your dad passed away, that was a horrendous thing. And I'm sure that as this child who was strong but very sensitive, you felt a lot of anger and rage too, because you didn't know what else, right?
Yeah, but that's very typical when someone loses someone to suicide. There's a lot of, you know, first you go through the guilt, then you go through the rage, then you go through what I call the if onlys and beat yourself up. And then you go back to, you know, being pissed off again. And then you hopefully make some peace with it. And as I always say to people, I loved my father. I respected my father. Do I think what he did was really, really, really shitty? Yeah. But it doesn't mean I loved him any less.
Right. No. And your father was a brilliant, brilliant guy. Yeah. And depression, no one really, unless you go through it or live through it with a family member, understand the complexity of it and the depths of it and what it does.
But also back in 87, people didn't talk about it.
Uh-huh.
It was a vastly different landscape than it is now.
but you got through it, and your mom got through it. And
again, what were the choices? The choice was to get through it.
But you remember all the good things, and that's what's important. You take the good, and you leave out the bad. And
and that's a lot with my parenting, and I think that's everybody. You try and take the good from your childhood and what you feel your parents did right, and you try and jettison the bad.
But Melissa, your mother always thought that you were a really great parent. And she talked about it. And I always had the feeling that she was a great parent too, but it's just a different thing. She looked at your style of parenting with such admiration.
Well, she used to always say to me, "You're such a better parent than I was." And I would always be like, "I don't think that's a thought you should be sharing with me." Maybe one should let her inside voice stay inside. You know what I mean?
But she couldn't. She couldn't do that.
I understand the compliment, but you got to understand kind of what you're saying to me. You know what I mean? That always used to make me laugh. I'm like, really? Are you trying to send me back into therapy?
Oh, that's so funny. But it was with pride. You should see my kid. What?
But, again, I don't think we should be saying, well, there were times I was a really shitty parent.
Oh, my gosh. That was really funny. And when I think of all the holidays, and you do that too, that your mom had, where if someone was alone, even if it wasn't her best friend, but it would hurt her, and she would definitely make sure they were included. And your mother wasn't, right? Go ahead, Melissa.
I still have these big Thanksgivings just like she did. And, bring out all the dishes that we used. And, it's very special and it's very meaningful to Cooper because he has such memories of that. And I guess it was a couple years ago, we had set the table and all that, and he noticed that something wasn't there. He was like, where's, whatever particular thing it was. And I'm like, oh, I didn't put it out this year. He's like, no. Like, it's interesting to me what he's so connected to.
Yeah. But it's persistence of memory. I always say that if I have a holiday and I leave out a dish and the kids will say, where is it? And I'll say, I don't mean China, I mean a food thing. I'd say, right. Well, no one likes it. And my son would say, it doesn't matter. It has to be here. And I understood. That's their history, their grandparents, their security in a way.
Absolutely.
So tell me, by the way, guys, I'm talking to Melissa Rivers, Lies My Mother Told Me, her brand new book. So what are you up to now? I'm sure that when the book came out and you've been getting a lot of press, that you've had a lot of interest in going a step further and doing something more with this. What are you thinking?
I don't know yet. There's people are just starting to get interested. It just came out April 12th, I believe, April 10th. It was actually, dropped. So, people are sniffing around. I have so many other projects going, starting with my podcast and a couple of scripted projects. And it's very interesting to me that this is the book that people are like, oh, this could be interesting. And you want to be like, right. You guys are just catching up.
That's, well, it sometimes takes a little time. And your mom always used to say that even though famous, successful, she was not part of Hollywood or part of any of those inner circles. And do you feel that way? You were a Hollywood kid.
100%. I everyone's always like, oh, when I was with the podcast, they're all like, well, you can get anybody you want. And I'm like, I don't know anybody. I was raised in such a non-Hollywood environment, and I've continued that. I have one close friend from college that is in the entertainment business.
Right, and that's Penn, right?
Right. I have one that's a documentarian. And then outside of that being my inner circle, I have other friends sort of in outer layers that are in the entertainment business, but I'm not hanging out with anyone that the paparazzi would care about.
Right.
It's just not who I am, and it's not who my life,
right.
My life is much more, but also that's how I was raised.
Mm-hmm. And Cooper, too? He's not a Hollywood kid?
No. And again, he went to school with some kids, who had famous parents or famous grandparents. Mm-hmm. But I also think it's how you differentiate. And, I had such a traditional childhood where we sat down to dinner every night. And to the day my mom died, my friend called her Mrs. Rosenberg. Mm. So,
which is so
that's sort of the way,
right?
So interesting. And that's how Cooper was raised.
Well, you're doing a great job. And as I said to you in the beginning, your mom would really love this book. It would give her a lot of laughs and a lot of pleasure. So thank you. All the best to you, Melissa. I look forward to talking to you again and following your interesting life and career path. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. Joan, you know how much we love you.
I thank you, Melissa. Lies my mother told me.
I'm glad that you understood how funny the book is.
Yeah, but it's funny. But you meant it to be funny.
Yeah, but people keep asking me, which is crazy, did she really say and do these things? And you're like,
no.
She wasn't psychotic.
She was just funny.
She was just funny, and I got to channel that. Yeah,
it was great. No, I'm telling you, they'd both be proud. All right, honey, take care.
Thank you so much. Take care.
We'll talk again. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II, one that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.